SoccerChronicle.com informa Los Cachirules, el podcast con más garra, pasión y picardía que hasta el equipo de todos. Y ahora con ustedes, Albert el Chichis Campa.
Okay, so I'm assuming the title is finished. I can't really tell because I can't hear it. But this is another edition of Los Cachirules. This is episode, I'm going to say 11, even though that may or may not be right. This is John Jagu, and with us tonight we have our usual cast characters. We have Alberto Campa. How are you doing, Albert?
Hey, what's up? Doing good.
And we have Joel Aceves. How are you, sir?
Greetings, John. It's episode 7.
Okay.
For the record.
We have Christian Velez. How are you, sir?
How you doing, gents?
And of course we have Juan Uribe from Long Beach.
Hey, hello everybody.
Good to have everybody on tonight. A couple of topics that we're going to be discussing tonight for about the next hour to 90 minutes or so. We're going to start off with the national team and Juan Carlos Osorio's first practice and first press conference outside of being introduced with the team. And so I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing. I was going to hopefully grab some clips, but it apparently turned out that he is not a big fan of Giovanni Dos Santos right now, which frankly I'm not really surprised because he really hasn't been playing all that well, whether he's been playing in MLS or not. And for Giovanni, he really doesn't going to have a chance to show what he can do until February or March. So it looks like Giovanni is going to be out for the next, whatever it is that they do between now and the 2 games in March. So that's what we got going on. It looks like we have a so-called Dan on the line. How are you, Dan? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm good. How's everyone doing?
Yeah, it's been a while, Dan. We had a few drinks at in where I was in Orange County when I was for the
Rose Bowl.
For the Rose Bowl, that's right. So
where was it at the Ritz or something?
We were
hotel
at the Fairmont, some fancy schmancy hotel that charged you $25 for breakfast. So we ate breakfast there once, and then went and found a taco stand after that.
We were the 2 smallest guys. It was looking at those Texas football players was pretty. I usually feel small. I felt especially small that day. But anyways, I wanted to say hi everybody. Thanks for letting me join the pachanga. The desmadre.
Well, we appreciate it, and I guess the first topic is Giovanni Dos Santos. Did his move to MLS doom his national team career, or was it already doomed?
I think he screwed himself by turning down or maybe somebody at the FMF is mad, upset at him. Because one of the comments from Baños was, hey, Gio's not at 100%, so we decided not to call him up.
So you think it's more of a political issue than a sporting issue, Juan?
I think it's a sporting issue, not necessarily an MLS. And I'm one of those guys who'll hate on MLS like Pern does, but I think it's more of a. Well, from what he said today, he seems to think that he doesn't fit into the formation. I think he even said that Juan Carlos Osorio said that he asked him where he felt most comfortable on the field, and that's not where he needs someone. He already has all 3 of those dudes who he thinks are better than Gio at the moment.
Well, I mean, the reality is that Giovanni started off real hot at MLS. He had a couple of really good games, but after that first month or so, he cooled off tremendously. He got hurt again, and he put on a little weight. So he really hadn't been the same player. And and watching the playoff game, I know that everyone wants to blame Giovanni for that loss, but I mean, it was really their defense that was just so terrible. But I'm not so sure whether if he warranted or a call-up or not, but the fact that his current form compared to the guys that are coming in, like Chicharito, who's just been on fire, and Decatito, who's playing well, Jimenez, who is doing really well despite the fact that he hadn't scored a goal yet, but he's really been playing well for Benfica. He just didn't. There were just guys that were better than him in the position. I think that if he can get to the point where he can be a little bit better, he'll certainly warrant a call. But right now, I'd have to agree with the fact that he's just, maybe he's just not, his level of play just isn't as good, considering that there's a whole bunch of guys ahead of him that are doing better.
Well, one thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, no, I think it's mostly a sporting issue, because I think we all agree with the fact that Gio is not at a level where, like John just said, he can compete with some of the other guys that are coming in. But at one point, when he opted out of the USA game about a month ago, people and a lot of the press sort of questioned his commitment, which I think is the last thing you can question about when it comes to Gio and the national team. The kid has been part of the national team for 6 years, and he's been with the national team through thick and thin. The under-23s in London, 2 World Cups, 2 World Cup qualifier, two cycles of World Cup qualifying, 3 Gold Cups. I don't see where we can question that commitment. But ultimately, yeah. Osorio was talking about wanting to use Gio as sort of a second forward whenever he does use a setup with 2 forwards, and he doesn't. Apparently, this is kind of like what happened with Chepo, where Chepo sort of started with Gio on the wings and essentially at some point moved him inside behind the main forward, or the number 9, and for whatever reason during that period of time, it was the worst stretch of national team play that obviously coincided with the Hex. So maybe we don't really know what was said. Supposedly they had a meeting at which Baños was there and apparently Gio's dad as well, and maybe Gio wasn't as gung ho about playing in a position where he doesn't feel he is going to be in a position to succeed, which then becomes more of a personal issue than a team issue. And at that point, you're better off leaving the player aside and focusing on the guys that at least, played in the USA game and did it rather well. So, there's not a lot we can sort of, we can speculate a lot, but at the end of the day, I think it's not a terrible idea to have Gio off this roster.
One thing else, I don't know if it's been discussed, but when if the team plays well, his chances are going to diminish even more so, because his chances to impress are nil now. The MLS season is over, and if these guys continue to shine, there's going to be very limited chances for him to actually get back on the stage and actually prove that he could actually contribute again. It's unfortunate too, because I think he was like the one glimmer of hope for like a number of years.
Yeah, you know what? I like to think that regardless of his club situation, he still sort of pulled through for Mexico. He was sort of the catalyst along with Temoc and Efrain Juarez during 2009 during the second part of the Hex, including that Gold Cup. He was pretty good at the 2010 World Cup. The 2011 Gold Cup, he was amazing. He was really good at the Olympics. The only sort of gripe we can have with him is, and not just him, a lot of the players as well, was the Hex in 2013, and again in 2014 at the World Cup, he was one of our best players. So for better or for worse, he has, so to speak, He has shown up for the national team. So, we talk about Ochoa as well. Does he deserve to be on a team right now? He hasn't really played. And Osorio talks about his trajectory, and it's something he has to respect. Well, the same argument could be made for Gio as well, But unfortunately for Gio, he does have a lot more competition up top than Memo does in the goalkeeping position. So it's kind of a weird sort of like talk out of both sides of your mouth there from the coaching point of view, but it makes sense. I think it like I said, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible call to leave him home. Like John said, he wasn't playing. I mean, he was playing okay with the Galaxy there for the last month and a half or so, but certainly not something that you'd say, this guy has to be on the national team. But if he was on a team, I also wouldn't think it's a bad idea. So I mean, I'm of two minds. I think that, I mean, it's not a bad idea to leave him off, but if he was on a roster, I also wouldn't think it was a bad idea.
Well, I'll tell you what, it seems like it's almost like a wake-up call for him that maybe if he wasn't considering a loan move in the winter to maybe go help. I'm just going to throw this out there. I know that they've said that they wouldn't take him, but like maybe he should, take a loan spell with America for the Clausura, or with somebody else, maybe like Monterrey or somebody, somewhere where he's more comfortable. Just because I mean they've, the battle lines have been drawn. It's and they're saying, where you are right now, it's just not good enough for you. And the fact that you're not going to play for 6 months between now and then things are going to get, as Daniel said, your chances of making an impression are going to get are nil right now. You won't be able to make an impression. So, it could be, and something that Osorio said there. I'm a little confused because I read this morning that one of the reasons they didn't call him up is because he didn't talk to him. It's like you couldn't fly to LA. It's, what is it, like a 2.5-hour flight from Mexico to go to LA? I mean, I know it's not that far.
That was the most absurd thing I've heard yet.
Yeah, I mean, and he was in Tijuana. Didn't he go to Tijuana to see the Pumas Cholos game?
Yeah, no, the reports are conflicting because Osorio himself said he hasn't met with him, but there's also a lot of media reports that say that he did, in fact, meet with him and wasn't really happy about sort of Gio's demeanor when it came to what Osorio was planning tactically and where he saw Gio fitting in. Because, I mean, if we go by the idea that he's going to have two different setups for home and away games during the qualifiers, if he's going to play a 4-3-3 at home or some variation of that, I still think that on the wings you have guys that I would feel personally more comfortable with right now playing those positions, even to the point where I wouldn't think that having Aquino, for example, playing above Gio at this moment is that, it's that far-fetched. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Aquino at all, but based on what Osorio wants to do, I'm not entirely sure where I see Gio fitting in,
Well, one thing that I'm reading on this article.
Yeah, go ahead, Albert.
Oh, yeah, real quick. There's one article that he said, I think from Giovanni said he wanted to be below the forwards, and he compared him. Well, he said Peña and Esquivel are at a better nivel than he is at the moment. And I was like, I mean, Peña was doing all right. I don't know about Esquivel being better than Gio. Actually, I don't think either of those guys could take Gio's spot. But with the last game that he played with the Galaxy in that playoff game, he was like the go-to guy. He was the guy who would bring it up to the forwards, and he would give passes, and they're all offsides, and those guys were all slow and old, the two forwards that they had. But Gio was the man during that game. I didn't think he played real bad, but his teammates were just so low on the level
that defense was just awful. Now, Joel, you thought that Gio should be on the team, right?
Oh, hello. Yeah, you guys already mentioned it. The conflicting reports. The ones from Santiago Baños, where he said that because they hadn't spoken with him, and then how Osorio talked about Memo being in the team because of his trajectory. So I feel there's more going on than we're led to believe. I don't know if this is good or bad, but yeah, I feel he should be in there. I think like they have was this Peralta. He's really good, but he's 31. He's gonna be 34 by the World Cup. So even though I feel he belongs in the team, I wouldn't put him over Gio.
Yeah, but the thing about Peralta, I mean, he is a pure striker. Gio is more of a, I've always seen him as like a withdrawn forward kind of guy. I mean, Peralta can score with the right, he can score with the left, he can score with his head. I mean, he's just a goal scorer. I don't necessarily think that they would assume the same roles. Now, as far as Gio not fitting in, that really doesn't make any sense to me because he can play on the wing, either on the right side or the left side. So it just seems a little bizarre to me. Maybe and anytime I hear stuff like this, I always wonder, was he stooping somebody he wasn't supposed to on, like a directivo's daughter or something on the road? I mean, what happened?
Well, he's saying that there are others better. He's saying Chicharito, Raúl, and Oribe are better at the moment.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned Oribe, because I mean, if you're gonna choose players and you're doing a long proceso that culminates in Russia, then essentially you're gonna want younger players.
Yeah, and I think Gio will fit in eventually, but right now at this moment for these two games, maybe maybe it wasn't maybe there's some other guys that were available. Now I will say this,
Peralta also had the benefit of having played in that playoff game as well.
Right, it's the most recent sort of sample size that Osorio has, so he can't, I don't know. He's going to go with probably a lot of those players because that's the most recent sort of evidence that he has.
And the thing is that Gio pulled out of the CONCACAF, the Confed playoff, and then
he was injured.
And then he was injured, but then he played a week later.
Right.
Then he came back to MLS and played
the full 90.
Yeah, and so suddenly he was healed, and it seemed really sketchy because I know there was some yellow press out there saying that hey, Gio signed some kind of deal to where he wasn't gonna play that playoff.
This always cracks up. There's no deals that players sign. Nettie didn't get paid. It's just.
Yeah, there's no trato de caballeros either, right?
Exactly. There's just no. But I mean, I talk about the national. If it's gonna be, they just leave the guy off. It's like I remember when they had all that stuff about in the Copa America that Pavel Pardo didn't play and Osorio and I forget who the other guy was, Sancido. Or I forget, I think the three guys.
Yes,
and
those three guys, yeah.
Yeah, the real reason is that their clubs weren't going to let them play, but the FMF is so bad at PR that they just, they would rather, prolong this idiotic novela to sell newspapers and, get ratings and just tell the truth. It's like the clubs weren't going to let them play because they already played one tournament. There was no way they were going to let them play another one.
Well, they're taking a step in the right direction now. They've gotten rid of the Zona Mixta for press. And now they're going to simply do it like most clubs do it and most national teams do it, where they have an assigned press conference with 3 random players, and that's it. Because the press has been harping on the fact that during the Gold Cup, the players refused to speak to the press after the whole thing that went down with Record. And then they felt they were being taunted because the players would go past the media stage after the games, just hanging out and high-fiving and playing music and completely ignoring the press. And you know how it is in Mexico. You can't, those are the guys that they shape public opinion. You can't really get on their bad side. And we've seen what happens to players that do that, like Nery Castillo, for example. Despite the fact that a lot of the fans sort of agree with him in the way that he was being hounded back then, his response only served to unify the press. And much like it did with the Miguel Herrera incident with Martinoli, even some of the guys in media that felt like Martinoli had sort of been winding up Herrera for months and that it was only a natural occurrence that he would snap at some point, they sort of had to side with their own. And that's kind of, like you're right. I mean, the FMF does not do PR very well at all, and this is a problem with that. And it's only going to become more of a problem, especially with the Gio thing, because there's still not a clear answer as to what happened with his injury a month ago? How was he able to go out and play a week later? And why the Galaxy has no obligation to anybody to really come out and say, well, maybe he tweaked something and we thought it was better for him to stay, whatever. So, all of it falls on the FMF, and they don't handle this well at all. And they never have. I mean, over the past few years, we can point to at least a number of examples where simple incidents that happen everywhere all the time were handled poorly, and all it really did was create a vacuum of pressure for the players that was really unnecessary.
Hey, and you know what? Before the playoff, there was pictures of him training, and they showed him jumping 3 or 4 feet in the air for headers, and
he was doing drills. That's why it was you know,
it was
it
like
is,
a bizarre
it's weird.
situation, man. And I think
So do you believe he probably did at least unofficially agreed to make some kind of agreement not to play that game? I just have trouble buying that.
I don't know if he. I don't know.
I do too. But again, if you just don't, if you don't want to do it, just don't call him up, and don't create these excuses. Just say, hey, listen, right now he's not going to play, and he'll get called up in the future. Just leave it at that. Just get ahead of the story and be done with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me as a fan, I will say this simply that I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because there's never since Gio has been with the national team. Again, I can't point to any sort of instance where, like Vela, for example, where we have clear sort of pattern of him not wanting to come for whatever reason. That hasn't been the case with Gio, and so this is sort of this transitional period has not been good to him. He's moved to MLS and he's been criticized for that, and and it just so happened also that his sort of dip in form coincided with other players sort of gaining form and maybe overtaking him in the pecking order. So I'd like to believe it is a sporting issue in that sense, and if and when he shows a higher level, we'll see him back with the national team.
Hey, but when he was at Ipswich Town,
well, I mean, there's no doubt that we've talked about it in the past. I mean, has been for the past 6 years. He's done, he's played exceptionally well. There have been other players in the past that have not played for the national team for a spell, like Cuauhtemoc didn't play, and Hugo Sanchez didn't play for a couple of years back in the late '80s. So he'll be back. He's young enough. Right now, the reality is that it's not as important for him to be there because there are other players, which frankly is great because Mexico usually doesn't have depth at that position. So it's good to have that. So let's move on. No more Gio. No more Gio talk. We're done with Gio.
Yay.
Now, a guy who has been on fire lately, and I think that this is something that bears a lot of discussion, is the fact that Chicharito has just been, and his form has been nuts. I mean, since the game in Pasadena, I think there's been one game that he's played where he didn't score. He's scored in what 7 of 8 games or 8 of 9 games.
Yep.
It's been really impressive, and people say, oh, it's because he's on a smaller team. No, it's because he's playing. He could play on any team in the world, and I think that, he's proven that he can play on any team in the world. For folks to diminish him because he's scoring goals at a mid-table club in Germany on a consistent.
I personally don't think his form is all that as good as as I've seen it. Actually, personally, I think his finishing and his touch right now is even rough for him. It's pretty rough. Despite that, he's still racking up goals, which goes to show how good the rest of his game is. I think he's got a real good chance of actually bettering what he is already doing right now. I think he's got a real good chance to go on a streak where he could really start maybe get a brace or even because they're actually looking for him at all the times, and if he actually gets a game where he takes all his chances, he could have real big games.
Yeah, Daniel has a good point because you've seen he's been sort of on an ascending curve. He's sort of getting to know the team, they're getting to know him, and you're starting to see like some chemistry developing between certain players and Chicharito, but. I reluctantly will agree with Daniel that I think I've seen Chicharito in overall sort of individually in better moments. That's not to say that this current streak isn't good. I mean, he's scoring, and ultimately that's what it is being asked of him. But coming into the national team on a streak like this, regardless of any of our personal opinions about things he could be doing better, it's nothing but good news.
Yeah, I mean the reality about Chicharito is that he could play better, he could play worse. That's fine, but he is paid to score goals, and that's right. What he's delivering right now for his team. And hopefully he'll do the same in these next couple of games. He had a good game the last time he was down in San Pedro Sula. Doesn't necessarily play as well at the Azteca. But I don't think that he has to have the pressure to play as well at the Azteca like he's had in the past. So, maybe with the reduced pressure, maybe that'll help him a little bit more than than what's had in the past. Now there are rumors, and I don't know how this started, but I think it's hilarious that that Chelsea's looking at. Chelsea doesn't need goal scoring help. I mean, they need help elsewhere. So I don't necessarily put any truth to these rumors. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I just don't see Mourinho going for a guy like Chicharito. What do y'all think?
I think he's always been a Chicharito fan, right? Didn't he try to bring him into Real Madrid when he was with Manchester United?
Yeah. There was supposedly interest. Mourinho supposedly is a fan of Chicharito as a player, so I don't think it's that far-fetched. And the reason why I say that, it's not necessarily because of Chicharito, but mostly because of the current slump that Chelsea's in. They have a couple of forwards that, all of a sudden Diego Costa is being questioned, and his abilities are being questioned. I don't think it, even if it were true, if it was factually true, I don't see how that would be a good move for him, especially now that he's finally in a situation where he's finally getting to play every game, and even more important than that, he's playing for a team that's pretty young. I mean, collectively, Leverkusen is a very young team, and so Chicharito becomes he plays the same role that Guardado does at PSV, sort of a more veteran presence where his contributions are sort of twofold. He's expected to perform on the field, but he's also, now the expectation is that he's going to help guide these younger players throughout the games and managing the games and stuff like that. So I think it's a great situation for him. I mean, it's nice that Mourinho and Chelsea and what have you are interested in him, but the fact of the matter is he's already played for two of the best teams in the world, and we've seen what that did to him.
I agree. Yeah, 3.
He'll turn into the super sub again.
Does he become more expendable though if Leverkusen gets bounced? Does he become actually sellable at that
gets
point?
Bounced from what? Gets bounced from the Champions League?
Well, yeah, because
that's going to happen. They're not. I mean, even if they made the next round, I mean, honestly, do you guys, if Leverkusen by some miracle made it to the round of 16, do you guys see them going any further than that?
No, I think it'd be a stretch to even think they're going to make it out of the group. Right.
I think they have Europa Cup written all over them.
They could do some damage in the Europa League.
Yeah.
If they get a left back.
Sold, I don't know, because you know what, Leverkusen, like I said, they have a pretty young team, and so they probably have some sort of. I remember some reading about this, but they do have like a 2 to 3 year project with a lot of these players, so they want to sort of maximize that, and so I think that's where Chicharito comes in. I mean, they're gonna. I would think also that he understands, given his recent interviews, that this is a special situation for him because he's finally at a team that's going to allow him to be a regular starter and a regular contributor. So I'm not sure he would, at this point in his career, after having played for Real Madrid and Manchester United, that he would fancy, quote unquote, a move to Chelsea, because that would be more of the same for him.
Right. That's a very good. Go ahead, Juan.
I was going to add that the only thing I don't like about the Chelsea move is that they're saying Mourinho might get fired. So I think, remember Gio moved to a club and then they fired the coach, and so
That's right.
I think he doesn't want to go to a situation where the coach that likes him is going to get fired. And I think until that becomes clear, he should stay put.
You made a very good point about Chicharito being kind of the older guy, which is kind of weird, but it's true. But the one thing that Chicharito has, where he is just a world-class guy, is that he's a world-class professional, and he'll show the guys how to practice, how to comport themselves on and off the field, kind of like Guardado did. So that in that sense, I think that the best thing for Chicharito, and I never believed the rumors of the whole Chelsea thing anyway, but I think Leverkusen's a great spot for him, and if they make it to the Europa League, which I think they will, as long as they beat the Belarusian team, they should make it into that. I think they can have a pretty good deep run. As far as Bundesliga, if they can get into like the top 6 or 7, I think that'd be a good season for them. Because I've watched their games; they're not a good team. He is far and away. He and the is it Algerian or what's the other?
Arabi.
Shana Glue, Shana something or other.
Yeah, number 14.
They have about. I think that. Well, individually they have some good players, but I think collectively they're just very naive, and you can see it in the way that they sort of lose track defensively very easily, and you know, I mean, it's exciting to watch them play because they're bound to score a couple of goals, but you know they're going to give up at least a couple of goals as well.
They need to get rid of Wendell, man. That guy's a...
Well, he's a very young player. I mean, he actually just got called up to the Brazilian Olympic team. I don't know if he's a fullback, to be honest. Defensively, he's not very good, but going forward, he's you know, he's a fine player, but he's also very young, and again, you know, that situation for Hernandez is very, very good because he gets to showcase pretty much all aspects of his game, his leadership, which I think is an underrated part of his game. I mean, he's a very vocal guy on the field, and you always see him, you know, sort of helping his teammates out, and you know, when they miss, you know, he doesn't grimace, he doesn't yell, he just, you know, come on, let's do it, we'll do it again, we'll do it better, which I think is a very, very important trait, especially when everything starts to get, you know, more and more compressed, and the press gets more and more in Leverkusen because they have dropped a lot of points recently. I mean, I remember seeing an article today on, I think it was Record, where the title of the article was a little misleading, but it was pretty much saying that despite the fact that Hernandez has scored in the last 6 or whatever games, they've lost at least half of those games. So what good is it really? You know, I mean, individually it's great for him. Well,
Wendell's the weak spot there.
It's good for Chicharito.
Defensively, yeah, Wendell is not as strong.
That's why I think it's important that he actually starts netting those goals, and not blow some of those chances, because I think it can be the difference in maybe getting a point or actually even getting all three. I think if he's a little bit more proficient with the scoring, I think it'll absolutely translate to a little bit more wins, because he is a focal point. They're looking at him to end the plays.
All the strikers miss though, dude. And
yeah,
Chicharito puts plenty away. Like,
don't get me wrong, he's my absolute favorite as far as Mexico is concerned. I absolutely think he's our undisputed starter, at least if it were up to me. I just think that sometimes in early on in the game, when you get to really change how the flow of the game goes, getting that first goal, be it Chicharito or somebody else, it's really important psychologically to get that goal in, because you automatically put the pressure, and then like the other ones, they somehow have a tendency to fall a little bit more easier, whereas you blow those chances, and then the other team doesn't blow their chance, and then guess what? Now you're playing from behind. So I do think, and since he is kind of that leader that you guys were speaking of, I do think that's one area where I still think he needs to just tighten up a little bit.
You know, Hugo said that the conversion rate for any team, for any striker, is like every 3, you know, shots on goal should be 1 goal. I don't think Chicharito's that far from that ratio, but I mean, he does good just to get in the positioning, and
yeah,
he's getting more attempts. He's going to be getting more attempts than everybody else because he's so much better at it than everybody else in that regard. So like, I'm really not trying to diminish him at all.
No, factually speaking, you're absolutely correct. I mean, there have been a couple of games where you know, he's missed some. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they were easy or not. I mean, he's missed shots that we think he should put away. But on a more realistic sort of view, I think it's unfair to. It's a little unfair. I'm not saying it's unfair, but it's a little unfair to sort of, you know, talk, you know, or create the or shape the conversation around the fact that Leverkusen could have gotten more points if he had put those goals away, because some of the goals that they've given up have been horrendously naive, and so you could point in either direction, but ultimately it doesn't matter, because as a team Leverkusen has to do a lot better, because you know there are going to be games where Chicharito's not going to score, and because we know it's going to happen.
Hush your mouth. Hush your mouth. Well, he's going to score.
You know, we all know this comes in cycles, you know, and I mean, I'm interested in seeing where Chicharito stands, you know, 6 months, 8 months from now when the season's over, and he's heading into national team duty for Copa America. How many goals is he going to have in all competitions? You know,
I think he'll have.
Me personally, I'm thinking.
That's 25. What I'm thinking too. Yeah.
I'm thinking 20. 20, I think, is and it's not even like it's a stretch. I think that's a very realistic number for him.
I think it's really conservative.
Well,
I'm going to say 30 if they get into UEFA.
Okay.
Yeah, 25 I think would be a great target for him, and yeah, let's hope that he plays a full season so that when he comes back to play that tournament, he'll be in good form. I guess we'll know. Personally, I think it's fantastic that he's playing as well as he is coming into these two games because we need as Dan said, we need a guy to get that early goal. If Mexico can get a goal within the first 15 minutes at the Azteca against El Salvador, they'll win 5-0. But if they, wait until the second half to score, it's gonna, the longer it waits, the tougher it's going to get for them to get one. So getting that early goal would be just massive. So, all right, moving on. No more Chicharito. We're done with him. He should have a great. Couple of games coming up here, starting at the Azteca, and then at San Pedro Sula, he needs to get a couple more goals there as well. So moving on to topics, as I'm trying to find them here. Well, we wanted to talk about. Good Lord, what was next on our list, Albert? As I'm trying to find it here. Oh, here we are. Vela, Carlos Vela. Ooh. Now, is he really going to MLS, or is he honestly? Does he want to play at Chiapas? I mean, let's face it. I think he wants to play at Chiapas.
No, he's probably going to end up in MLS.
He wants to be on a team.
Well, I mentioned this. I think it was in one of our first episodes. We briefly talked about Gio and Vela, and I think Santiago Baños had a very good point in the sense that Vela has been in Europe for the last 10 years. So that alone, to me, sort of signifies that he may have just gotten to a point where, like, he doesn't feel that he needs to prove himself competitively in Europe, and maybe wants to sort of, quote unquote, cash in and have a, maybe an easier path down the remainder years of his career, which is strange to say because I still don't think he's hit his peak yet. But I do think, I hope he doesn't, but I do think he'll end up in MLS.
You know what? That would be disappointing from him because wasn't one of his personal goals was to play for Real Madrid. But, I mean, we all know he's not a fan.
Hey, if he gives up on playing the World Cup, I don't think he could care much for playing in a top team. I think he just wants comfort at this point.
Yep.
Because there was talks that he could have left Real a long time ago. I mean, La Sociedad.
He wants to go watch a Miami Heat game.
I think Gio probably convinced him there, huh?
It wouldn't surprise me at all if he times his entry into MLS if and when Miami gets a team, which it's looking like, Well, I thought Liga MX was bad about buying your way into the league, but I guess MLS it doesn't matter. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he times it for that. They just fired his coach today.
It was about
Moyes.
Yeah, David Moyes. I mean, honestly, he's playing 18th, 19th century soccer in a 21st century league. I mean, it was embarrassing.
Yeah, it was the most. Even watching the Real Sociedad games, it was just like Christ, like.
Yeah.
I could be doing some. I could be watching Chiapas versus Veracruz or something, and still probably have a better time,
Yeah.
I saw something that Vela had a part. That Vela might have had a part in his firing. I don't know if that was true or not, or it was just some article I saw that.
Yeah, they were saying they didn't get along, Moyes and Vela, but ultimately Moyes was just not a good fit.
Terrible.
And honestly, Real Sociedad has done a terrible job of reinvesting the money they got from like Antoine Griezmann or even they sold what's his name to Real Madrid and brought him back. What's his name? Ilarramendi.
Ilarramendi.
They've done a terrible job of investing, and they just the team hasn't really been that good the past year and a half anyway. So it's probably time for Vela to move on anyway, in my opinion. And unfortunately, it looks like MLS might be a real destination.
He should have struck when the iron was hot after the 2014 season when he just had the season of his life. That if he really wanted to move up to a bigger team, that was when he should have done it. He didn't. He's ended up having pretty serious, not serious, but just real nagging injuries ever since, and he just really hasn't been the same guy.
Yeah.
It would be disappointing to me to see him go to MLS because he's the kind of guy that he's already made his money, so it's like. Why would you want to do that? I mean, San Sebastian is so much nicer than Atlanta or Chicago, wherever it is that they want to assign him. Because let's face it, he's not going to pick his team; they're going to put him somewhere.
Chicago.
Yeah, but hey, 30
or Miami.
million though. Would you turn that amount down?
Well, that's the thing, though. Is if they're going to throw $8 million a year at him, you'd be stupid not to, because he's never going to make that in Europe.
Nobody really does, aside from Ibra, Messi, Ronaldo.
Yeah,
it's just unrealistic kind of money. And I, you know what? I'll tell you this: if he comes to MLS, I kind of expect the same thing to happen to him that happened to Gio, because they're going to be looked at as like the offensive sort of fulcrum, the offensive engine. And I'm not entirely sure Vela is going to shine under a system like that, because. These are players that are used to playing with a higher quality of players around them. That sort of a domino effect that sort of it brings out the best in them as well. And I don't think he's going to find that in MLS, much like Gio hasn't found it in the Galaxy, aside from players like Robbie Keane or at times Jazzy Sardis or Sebastian Lletget. I'm not entirely sure it's. Financially speaking, it's a great move for anybody. Let's be honest. But even sporting wise, I just don't see how that could be appealing to anybody.
It would be really funny, and I was thinking about this earlier today. He said, the rumors are that he wants to come be closer to home. So whether that's, and of course, it couldn't possibly be any team in Liga MX, right? So it's going to be somewhere in MLS. Well, I can think of a team that would love to get Juan Carlos Vela, and he's the kind of guy that would love to do it, in my opinion, and that would be America, just to stick it to Chivas one last time. I am dead serious.
Hey John, we're gonna fight after the show, John. Me and you.
Hey, I'm just throwing it out there. Let's face it. If there's one team that I think he would go to in Liga MX, it would be Club America, and there's.
That would be a great. He could be the substitute for Oribe Peralta.
Exactly. He could be the new.
They're very similar kind of players anyway. But let's not forget that his brother Alejandro Vela is playing right now in Minnesota, which will be part of MLS within the next year or two anyway. So there could be something there as well. Maybe they're just sort of buttering him up and bringing him over to MLS to be the face of the Minnesota franchise that's supposed to start in MLS, I think, in 2017 anyway. Yeah. So
hey guys. Keep in mind that the MLS is gonna give him a paycheck, but also, like, if you notice, Gio, all the, off the field stuff, promos that he's doing, I think
endorsement,
all the endorsements that might even double whatever the MLS offers him. So
is he on TV a lot in LA?
Been doing a lot of appearances. I couldn't tell you if he's on TV or not. To be honest,
do the sports guys still go to the Playboy Mansion 3 times a week because someone is releasing a new golf ball? The last time I was in LA, I watched the news, and it was time for the sports hit on the local news, and they're always at the Playboy Mansion. It's like, Titleist is releasing the new golf ball today at the Playboy, so we all had to come.
It's like a banquet hall.
Yeah. Now you wonder how they test that golf ball.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely. Yeah. So. I really do think that if there was a chance for a Mexican team to land him, and I think that this would be the time to do it, I think it would be, and frankly, I think it would be a great fit. I think it would be a really good.
I wonder what the reaction has been in Mexico, at least amongst the Liga MX clubs, to MLS looking to sort of bring in these current sort of national team stars. Because they're going to do it. They're going to go for Guardado. They're going to go for Chicharito. They've already gone for Chicharito. They've already got Gio. They're obviously going after Vela. It won't be long before they go after Herrera and eventually Tecatito. So are the Liga MX clubs ready and willing to step in and maybe offer a little more money, because ideally, why would you allow your rival league in the continent to start snatching up, the faces of the national team?
Right.
You'd think that. I think Club America did sort of make a play. I know Tigres made a play for Gio as well. And maybe maybe that's not enough. Maybe these guys do want to sort of experience the lifestyle here anyway. So whatever it may be, but
like they can go shopping every day.
To spend that kind of money though.
Well, I don't think they'll pay them that kind of money, but it could be close.
Yeah, but the reality is, Dan and Christian, is that they can pay that kind of money, and that's what frustrates me. I mean,
I know that they can. I'm just not. And my whole issue is like these owners obviously they don't want to.
Well, as Christian says,
that money.
At some point there's going to be a tipping point, and they're going to have to start shelling out.
Yeah, I think
it's kind of cool. Yeah. I would hope, or I would like, it'd be nice if some of the teams kind of went the route of Tigres and bring in guys from Europe. Like that was so unexpected, and I just thought kind of cool. Where like there's actually like a French NT players from the French national team who play in Liga MX. I just think that's pretty cool, and that really lifts the profile of the league more so than having Bella come back.
No, I agree. It's been fun to watch him there, and he's been playing well. And Tigres, unfortunately for a Pumas fan like me, I think are going to be the favorites to win the whole thing in the Liga. But that's a topic for another day. Anybody else have any comments on Bella, who it turns out is probably going to be playing that withdrawn forward in this game as well?
Oh, you know what? There's a chance he comes to LA. Remember, there's another MLS team.
LAFC, that's right.
LAFC, I think, in 2018.
Yeah, but that's. I mean, honestly, 2000. If he's 29, he can go to MLS when he's 29. I have no issue with that. These are the years where he's supposedly going to be at his best. Same with Giovanni, which is why it was such a disappointment for Giovanni to go to MLS at this point in his career. It's just been unfortunate for him.
Yeah, you know what? The U.S. fans sort of have lived through this, but on a much more personal level, because their players came from Europe to MLS, and their younger players haven't quite shown or good enough to go to Europe yet. We have the benefit of having these younger players who are, their mentality is a little different. They want to go to Europe. They want to test themselves. So I'm kind of with you, John. I mean, if these guys decide to come to MLS after the World Cup in 2018. That's great. I mean, it makes sense, And then, whatever. But right now, it seems like it doesn't seem like the right time for these guys to come here.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, if they, drive a dump truck full of money and drop it off in their driveway, that's. But like I said, I mean, that's something that if Mexico wants to not have that happen, then the only way they can do that is to match it.
But I wanted to add something. I think it's good to have a league that's gonna overvalue our players. It's better than having a player like Ochoa, who is on a free transfer and no one wants to take him.
Yeah, that was poor management on his part, to be honest. But
he should have stayed in France.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it could open another market for Mexican players if they do good in MLS. You could see it in the future where there's more and more Mexican players in this league. I mean, it's either that or you're just going to have more Brazilians or Argentines.
It's going to be funny, at least for me, if they start buying back their youth players that defect to Mexico, and then they end up buying them back. Instead of giving them chances.
Yeah, if Bella comes back, he's not going back to Chivas. I think we can pretty much all agree on that.
No, I mean MLS. If the MLS, they're academy players, they've been defecting to join academies in Mexico.
Yeah, but none of them have. Well, I mean, honestly, I could see someone like Joe Corona getting a deal to come back to MLS at some point. He's been a pretty average player in Mexico. I mean, his first season with Tijuana, he was, he came up with a team, and he was a standout in that team. That's what led to him being called up to the Olympic team, but. Even then, I mean...
Yeah, he's definitely plateaued.
He hasn't really grown much, and he's a player I could see MLS making a push for at some point. But they're probably, marketing-wise, they're going to want to keep bringing in guys that are going to sort of put butts in seats.
Yeah, well, they can definitely have him. I have no issue with that. No, but anyway, so I guess we'll conclude with on Vela is that the chances are pretty high he'll come to MLS. Joel, you think that that's not necessarily a bad thing, which I can sort of see that. I think that it's.
I think that could mean more players, like the clubs selling more players to MLS eventually. Now, especially this league is, there's a lot of investors putting in a lot of money. The new LA team was bought for $100 million. So
there's definitely that.
Yeah, Magic.
And why wouldn't you want a piece of that? Why wouldn't you want, especially if you're a team like Atlas or Pumas with good canteras, why wouldn't you want to have another market that would pay good money?
Right.
For your talent, and then that would mean more and more Mexicans playing.
Or finally playing, right?
Well, that's actually a really good point, Julie. Now that I'm thinking about it, because one thing that we talk about the U teams is that where do they go after this? They don't have anywhere to go. Maybe MLS could be maybe. See, this is why I think that both leagues need each other. They have whether they admit to it or not. They have a symbiotic relationship. I think it could only get it's only going to get more intertwined. So maybe MLS would be a good option for these guys to go on loan. Like say like this Garcia kid, the guy that from Chivas. Was he at Chivas? The Garcia number 8 in the U17.
Lopez.
Lopez, that's what I'm thinking of. Lopez.
Yeah,
but there's also
He's a Pachuca.
You have Salcedo and Cubo as pretty good examples.
Yeah, and then there's also So if these guys, if they can't get a sniff anywhere, then maybe MLS would be a good option for them.
Hey guys, just to go back a little, that was my point, kind of, where to me it would be ironic that they're not really giving the MLS doesn't give their own youth players chances, but once they make it in Mexico, they're making a name for themselves. They might not just Joe Corona, but the guys that are actually playing for Mexico. There's a bunch of them in the Pachuca Academy. There's some on the youth teams already.
It's funny you mentioned that the Dallas team right now, I think out of their 11 starters, like 8 of them came up through their youth ranks. They're like a really young team, and a lot of them are like Colombian American. A lot of them are something / American. They're definitely second generation guys that are here, and it's they've actually been fun to watch. I watched their game last night, and the Mexican goalie.
Jesse Gonzalez.
Yeah, won on penalties. It was great. It was. Yeah,
FC Dallas is sort of like the Pachuca version of MLS. They don't. I don't live in Texas. I know some of you guys do, but it doesn't seem to be a market where they've been very successful or wanted to even be successful in drawing these bigger names. They've sort of taken a different route and sort of been relying on their academy a lot more. So, I mean, that's I think to me. For leagues on this side of the continent, it's a winning proposition anyway.
Hugo Sanchez in the league's first year played for the Dallas Burn.
That's right.
Because I went and saw a doubleheader. I saw Mexico-Bolivia, and then Dallas Burn played afterwards. And he scored on a chilena, which was fantastic.
Of course he did.
I saw him score a shootout. I saw him score a shootout.
Shootouts, yeah.
He juggled the ball, like you had to run with it, but he juggled it a couple times and then he just kicked it in. But
that's hilarious.
He also played when he was young with the San Diego.
The Aztecs?
No, that was LA. San Diego. I don't know. They were Sockers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Sockers.
Yeah, as a youth player, he would do some of the pretemporada, I guess.
Yeah, in the summer, right?
That's right. I remember that. I remember being really upset. I was like, "How could he be on the Sockers? He was a Puma. What's going on?" I didn't know. Okay, so let's before we touch on Osorio one last time, let's talk little guy Mekis. Santos, Daniel. I'm sorry. You got to win at home if you have any chance to make the postseason. They didn't win at home.
At least once, right?
Yeah, at least once. And I can empathize because Pumas went like 5 years or whatever it was without winning at home, so I can.
You know what? I honestly, I don't care at this point. I'll easily trade a throwaway season for a Liga every single time. So I'm alright being the butt end of the jokes or the campeonitis, whatever you guys want to call it. It's absolutely okay. The fact that they won it last year, that'll hold me over for a while.
All right, fair enough. So you're, but see, what's so great about it for you is in 2 months, you have a new chance. You right back into it because the Clausura starts in January. Chivas, they had their wonderful parade. Everyone was very happy. I know that you, Joel and Juan, went down and watched the parade for their brilliant Copa MX title, and then they went and lost that unbelievably important game in the thing that really matters, the relegation. In the last possible minute, and that wouldn't have happened if Marco Fabian wouldn't have opened up his mouth. But there he was arguing, fighting in the last minute. They gave him a little extra time, and they got the goal.
They stopped marking. I'm sorry, John.
Go ahead.
What frustrated me was watching these guys. They stopped marking the players during the corners. They gave up 2 corners. Well, they gave up more than 2 corners, but they gave up 2 corners and they resulted in goals. And basically, you could tell nobody marked anybody. They just kind of watched it. Hey, they looked at each other. I guess, hey, that was your man or something.
Right.
Just terrible.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate for them, and this is what I don't understand is like, why on earth, if you're in the relegation battle, knowing you're going to be in the relegation battle, without even before the draft, you're going to be in the middle of it, and you give the team that you're going to be battling with 4 or 5 guys. I mean, how does that make any sense?
That's either that was Nestor de la Torre's moves or. He was in charge at the time, but there's question whether Higuera was making some of the deals for him.
I mean, I understand making deals, but don't give it to that's that's like the Yankees trading the Red Sox a pitcher, in mid-season. It's like why on earth would you do that?
They transferred like 10 players, man, or
16.
even more.
It was 16.
16 total.
But you know what?
Clean house.
You know what? Part of it was the salary cap. Because they had done some bad negotiations the prior seasons.
There's a salary cap?
Well, I mean, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. To make room, I mean, wages, they were spending a lot.
No, I understand.
Wages and you have players like Angel Reina who makes about $2 million a season.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
He's not even playing, and
there are 16 other teams you can negotiate with. That's my only point. I understand that.
No one wanted Reina, though. And so, I mean, they really did need money. And we talked about this last podcast. Chivas has been hurting financially. So that's another big reason you need to...
No, I mean, I understand it. I understand that. And it's, it's very unfortunate that they're in the middle of all that. And they really... I have a hard time understanding how a team like that can put themselves in that kind of situation.
Well, you know what? And this is something we talked about with Ronnie because Chivas is also part of OmniLife. So, I mean, we don't know what happens with the money Chivas gets from TV deals.
That's terrible.
What gets put where.
That is bad business.
And another thing I wanted to mention was, I don't think Chivas was aiming for the Copa MX. I think Almeida saw the cup, he gunned for it and he won it, but I don't think that was in the club's plans to fight for it. Because even last season they just used the reserves to play the cup.
No, I mean not. And the Copa MX. I mean that's what most teams do. I don't think that. I mean, as you get closer, deeper into the tournament, you're going to see teams that play more and more starters, and you see that in the League Cup in England and the DFB Pokal and all these other cups, the Copa del Rey, the same way. So, I think that's perfectly normal, and I'm sure that for Almeida, that was good.
Squad. But if you have a limited squad, do you want to do that?
Well, let's talk about.
They were using the. They were using the reserve. They were using the backup players for most of the tournament, right? It was only the final, and he didn't use like the whole first team.
I just want to say that in this game against Dorados in particular, yes, it's true that Fernando Arce had a very good game, but let's be honest. I mean, that's almost revisionist. And to be honest, it's the same idea of saying Omar Bravo should be with the national team right now because he's having a good season. Fernando Arce's time with Chivas came and went, and just because he had a good game, coincidentally in this game versus Chivas, it doesn't mean that they should look to bring him back or that it was a mistake to let him go.
No, I'm not saying it's a mistake to let him go. I understand you wanting to get rid of your players. All I'm saying is don't give it to the team that you're going to be in direct competition with in order for you to.
Well, no,
stay above the drop.
Someone mentioned this in a forum today. I think I was reading the Chivas forum, and it might have actually been Juan. Liga MX should do the same thing that the European leagues do when it comes to players that are loaned out. They shouldn't be allowed to play versus a team that owns their rights. I think it's a sensible thing to do because then things like this can be avoided. Where a lot of the talk about yesterday, and Juan is right. They sort of slacked on the defending a little bit, and that's all it took for Dorados to tie the game and then subsequently win.
Well, it was very unfortunate for them. Obviously, it's going to be, and they have to deal with this again next year too, don't they? I mean, they're not out of the woods yet. I mean,
at least the next year, probably at least the next 2 or 3 tournaments.
Ooh.
Yeah, Thomas Boy.
This is a long-term thing for Chivas.
Thomas Boy was talking about this. Thomas Boy, and I was saying it in English. He said, because he was with Atlas, and he says it takes about 3 years to get out of the relegation zone, to get enough points.
Well, an Atlas coach would know. There's no doubt.
And I think Chivas been at it for a good 1.5 years.
And this is why it's just completely ridiculous that they have this 3-year thing. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's just there's no need for it. There's just no need for it. If your team has a bad season, then guess what? You had a bad season. You better hope like hell you can avoid the drop. In May, in the games in May. It happens.
What I wanted to add is what I noticed about Almeida at first. He was getting like a lot of hype, and obviously Joely, it was bothering Joely because he thought it was a bit revisionist. But watching the last couple games, Isaac Brizuela and Marco Fabian, they look very subdued. Like they don't. Under Chepo, they looked a lot more dynamic. Even though Chepo's obviously, the team approaches the game very differently. And I just found it interesting that these guys they're not able to have the impact on the game that they should. And on the other end, though, David Ramirez, he looks like a more mature player. He's not, stepping on the ball and tripping over it like before.
Yeah, I think some players under Almeida have, I think notably the younger players, the really younger players, have sort of found a rhythm that they can operate under when it comes to Almeida and the performance of the team, whereas some of the players that you think are a little more established, like Brizuela, for example, like you mentioned, are players that haven't been quite as good or have shown what we expect from them. So it is a bit of an interesting sort of thing that's happening there, but I do feel it's circumstantial too. I think that Brizuela, for example, is a player that a lot has been made of the money that Chivas paid for him, and I think that it's only natural that he's going to feel that kind of pressure because unfortunately these players are carrying the pressure individually, but also collectively regarding the team's results and where they stand in the in the relegation battle. So that's why someone like Omar Bravo has been so crucial because he's older, he's a veteran, he knows how to handle this kind of thing, and he knows how to perform under this kind of pressure. So ideally you can find a balance there between the younger guys, the mid-20s guys, and the veterans. But Chivas doesn't have that right now. I mean, as far as veterans go, you have pretty much Carlos Salcido, Omar Bravo, and that's it. And one of those two is having a great season, and the other one should have really retired at least a year ago.
Hey, but Brizuela stepped in last. I get these confused. What was it, Clausura?
Yeah.
And he had a great season, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Other than the injury, so I don't specifically think it's the the situation, the relegation. It might be more the instability in the club, and the whole that the players asked for Reina to get kicked off the team. Things like that. I think, coaching changes, they're probably affecting him more than, I guess it all adds up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that. I mean, the fact that Vergara's his hands are tied right now. He can't sell the club. He can't. He certainly can't get relegated. He can't do anything. It's just. I mean, I feel bad for you guys because fans should have to deal with that, especially a team that has the kind of following and tradition that Chivas has. It's bad for the league because when Chivas is bad, then the league is better when Chivas is good, when America is good, when Pumas is good, when one of the Monterrey teams is good. It's yeah, exactly. It's just
don't forget about Poland. I mean, Cruz Azul.
Poland.
It's yeah. So anyway, I mean, I really do feel bad for you guys. I hope that they can, once it all gets worked out, that Vergara either sells the team and gives it to somebody that actually knows what they're doing, and Chivas can get back to where they belong, which is winning a championship every 10 years.
Oh my God! And the Podologas, right?
Almeida's got some nice hair, though.
Podologas for everybody. Come on.
He has the South American melena, man. It's hilarious. It's like
that's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Getting all the chicas.
All right, so let's wrap it up with our last topic, which is we can jump in more into Juan Carlos Osorio, and I'm trying to understand what is so terrible about him actually knowing stuff, being book smart. Some of the agents of the press seem to think that that's just like the worst possible thing a human being could have. Don't understand the press sometimes. They're talking about him. I guess Layun, he said that he'd prefer his players to play on the natural side of the field. I guess that's how his style works, which. Well, I guess I understand, but
it's not all the players, because today in the press conference today, he talked specifically about 3 players. He said Vela, Aquino were 2 players that he could see playing on the opposite flank to their natural foot. Whereas someone like Jurgen Damm, he thinks is a player that's better suited to play on a side that favors his natural foot. So in that sense, I think he understands, and he also said specifically that, he's also aware of the fact that there are things that have been working within the national team that he doesn't really want to mess with, because even if they don't necessarily align with his own personal beliefs and what he wants to do long term, at the moment, he doesn't really want to start tinkering with some of those things because they have been working. Which is to say that at least now, we shouldn't expect a lot of changes aside from probably Layun playing on the right and Jorge Torres Nilo playing on the left. But long term, that could be a different story. But I don't think it's as cut and dry as the press wants to make it out to be. All of a sudden, it's like there's like this cognitive dissonance where like the press doesn't remember that Layun had a pretty bad tournament during the Gold Cup playing on the left, and it was something that was harped on every single game. I mean, doesn't matter if it was Martinoli or the guys at Televisa or even the guys at Univision. We all saw it. We all saw that Miguel Layun, for some reason, I don't know if it was by tactical design or not, nearly every offensive play ended on the feet of Layun, and it was rarely executed well, or well enough to really complete the play. So having Layun on the opposite side, on the right, with the task of trying to get to the end line and put a cross in, it's really not changing a lot, and it really isn't something that's really that far-fetched that it should be causing controversy.
Well, I think it's just because he scored 2 goals this week.
And that's fine. That's fine.
But you're right, though. I mean, I was thinking about that, about Layun being on the left, and thinking, well, when did he ever shoot, and when did he ever score? And he got 1 against New Zealand, didn't he? And that was it. Or he came close. I forget what it was.
He got 2 against Israel, if you guys remember that.
That's what it was. Yeah, I knew. Yeah, it was.
Which the goalie was sort of he pretty much contributed to both goals. I just personally, I feel like it's one of those things where the press doesn't have anything to talk about because this is a guy that, yes, he came out of nowhere, more or less, to be the national team coach, but there's not enough of a background on him where they can sort of go at him. And they did it at first by hanging him out to dry because he has left a lot of teams before his contract expires or whatever. But now, now they're going after him, like you said, because he's a guy who likes to read books and be prepared. Like, that's a bad thing.
Exactly.
Leaving before your contract expires seems perfect for Mexico.
Well, I mean, exactly. Let's be honest.
That makes sense, dude. Good move.
I think Ronnie was making a comment on Twitter earlier that he didn't like the way he was sort of pitting the players against each other. Like after Aguilar gets better, he said, okay, it's going to be Aguilar and Layun fighting for that spot.
Why is that the problem?
And then
why is that a problem?
I mean,
you want competition.
It's competition, right? Yeah.
It's like the whole. Ronnie has brought this up that he didn't like under La Volpe where he made Osvaldo was the untouchable goalkeeper, which kind of Osorio did that with Memo, by the way. But anyways, and suddenly nobody could challenge Osvaldo for the starting goalkeeper spot, and I guess.
Juan, the reports are saying that Talavera will start tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. That's what Tom said. I think.
So that means so he's I guess there's competition. Hey, Memo, you're on notice.
It's sort of like playing in Layun's spot, assuming that Layun is only going to be playing on the right, or if he plays at all.
Well, Aguilar is injured right now, but you know what? I'm thinking Osorio might surprise us and start Lopez.
There's no chance.
At Azteca, I could maybe see that. Maybe. Because he also spoke about Layun playing in the midfield as an interior, so which is coincidentally, Miguel Layun's performance during the Gold Cup was pretty below average until the final 30 minutes, 25 minutes of the final where Piojo took out Guardado and slid Miguel Layun into the midfield, and all of a sudden it was like complete clarity for Layun. Every pass was on point. He knew when to run. He knew when to draw back and help defend, despite the fact that at that point the game was, more or less finished. But his performance in the midfield, I think, sort of, he's a very versatile player, and I think that that's what's gonna keep him in the fold. Despite the fact that he's a good player, his ability to play multiple positions is going to be obviously more. It's going to be good for him.
Yeah. And he plays in the midfield at Porto, doesn't he? I mean, isn't he? Did he replace Herrera, basically just on the left?
Well, no, he's playing as a fullback in Porto.
Oh, okay, I thought he was a midfielder for some reason.
But I wouldn't. He played as a midfielder with Watford. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Osorio does end up using Layun in the midfield because he gives. It's amazing that it's a simple. Osorio likes to build teams where he doesn't have to make 3 subs or 2 subs to change a tactical scheme. He can simply take out one player and move another 1 or 2 players into different positions, and then automatically have a completely different approach within the game. And then you still have 2 subs left or another sub left. So I think it's a very interesting thing that he wants to do, and players like Miguel Layun are what is going to help him do that. And to a lesser extent, I think Dedos Lopez as well, because he can play in the midfield or he can play in defense. So
he can also play a striker.
I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be surprised if he does play him.
Hey, Dedos, he can also play striker.
Man, I'm happy for that. I think he totally deserves it. If he comes on, I just don't see playing Dedos just because he's never played an official match. Like a qualifying match, or for Mexico. That's why I don't necessarily think that he'll come on as play as a starter. But I think he'll definitely play. I could definitely see him coming in the second half of El Salvador.
He would be playing against players that haven't had official games.
Well, I mean, I understand. What I'm saying is that I just think that compared to like a Layun or Jorge Torres Nilo, guys that have played, and I just don't see the coach in the first time. Pulling a Sven and going, we're going to go with Chichari with Vela and Gio in my first game.
Yeah.
These 2 18-year-old kids at the Azteca.
You know what? I think that was imposed on him.
I don't know, man.
I don't think he was.
I think he was a big fan of Vela and Gio, and that was again against Honduras, in which in true Mexico fashion, Mexico started like really well, and after about 15-20 minutes, we lost all momentum, and I think both Gio and Vela ended up getting subbed out at some point because they couldn't find their feet in that game. But this is a different situation, and let's remember that Osorio does not come with any preconceived notions about the player pool, because if this was Herrera or even Chepo, I would agree with you. I wouldn't see any of those two coaches taking those kinds of risks. But Osorio, he just might. He just might. Who knows?
Yeah, I think he's going to be kind of like Tuca in the sense that I don't think that he's going to. I think that he's going to manage his risk a little bit more cautiously than one might otherwise expect.
Didn't he say also that? I think I heard from you guys quote that he's not going to change anything that's been working. Although he's got like his ideals that okay, this is what we prefer, but we understand. Hey, we don't have time to work with these guys too much, and so we're going to stick with. So the team might even come out very similar to the way they played the Confed playoff.
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I agree with that.
No, it was funny because what's the guy named Trini Maradriaga?
El Primi.
El Primi. I thought he was the Monstruo. Wasn't he the Monstruo at one point too?
Well, the Primi is it's short for Primitivo, which I think is a terrible nickname, and it's incredibly offensive. But I don't even know what else to say about that.
Hey man, I will give him credit. The dude's been around for a while. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's not a
and his thing was, well, we're going to take advantage of guys being out of position. I'm sort of thinking, who is going to be out of position? I mean,
I don't think he understood that very well. No, you're right. He misread that because there's no way that, at least not short term. I don't think Osorio, like Juan just said, and like we've been talking about, I don't think he's going to really take those kinds of risks. I think he might be more willing to take risks on the players themselves, on some players, playing some players, like Dedos or even Jürgen Damm, but tactically speaking, and the way that the team played against the U.S., I think we're going to see something similar to that in the first game.
Yeah.
One comment on the guys on the right foot on the right side, the guys that run a straight line really speedy, like Jürgen Damm. When you get to the end line and you're running fast, you're not going to be able to cross it well if it's not your primary foot. So for that, I sort of do understand why Jürgen Damm would always be on the right, and why possibly Layun would be taken off the left, because if he gets down on his goal against recently that he scored was because they were on the offensive third and he just cut back and scored with his right foot. But if he's running down the sideline and it's coming up to the end line, he's not going to get a good shot or a cross off with his left, which I think we've seen plenty of times.
If it's somebody that knows how to cross the ball, and if that's what Osorio is looking for, then I kind of agree with Juan. I mean, Dedos Lopez the guy, his service is unbelievable. I mean, he puts just gorgeous ball. It's
especially on the run.
I'm surprised that Andrete wasn't mentioned. Torres Nilo, I don't know. I really don't like him personally, at least not, and especially when thinking about how they cross the ball. I think Andrete crosses the ball better than anybody. But if that's really what he's looking for,
he's a defensive guy. He's there to play defense. He's not there.
He's there to lock it down. But Dan has a point. I mean, Torres Nilo's not a bad cross for the ball, but I would put my money on Andrete any day of the week over Torres Nilo in that sense.
And Torres Nilo will probably play against Honduras, I would expect.
Well, I think what Osorio wants to avoid is he knows that the teams are going to sort of bunker down and force us to break them down. He doesn't want a sort of a repeat of what happened in the Gold Cuppers when we sort of camp out in the opposing half and knock the ball around and then get to the wings and do, a lot of passing before you cross it in, giving the other team a chance to sort of settle and be able to deal with the crosses. He wants early crosses into the box on the run, much like what Dedos is capable of doing. A filtered pass onto his path, and then look up, maybe take a touch, and then just swing it in. that's where Chicharito and Raul Jimenez would thrive with that kind of service in the air, and it also prevents the opposition from having time to settle down and sort of get the bunker down efficiently. I mean, whether or not we're talking about it, but when it comes to executing, that's going to be a different story, and we're going to see how this comes out on Friday. Which he's going to have the whole week to practice this and be with the team, but. I don't know if that's enough time to really expect any major changes.
Go ahead, Juan.
No, I was just gonna this is the first time these guys meet. Some of these guys meet Osorio, right? As a group, and they're together. That's gonna be interesting for me. I just wonder if there's gonna be any curfew issues, or if he's gonna try to crack down on any kind of that stuff.
I don't think he cares. I mean, I don't know. It just seems to me like that stuff is for the U levels.
Marco Fabian wasn't called up, was he?
It does strike me like that kind of thing is beneath him.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he's like these guys are professionals. Act like a professional, then have to worry about it. Yeah.
Marco Fabian didn't bring the liquor.
Marco Fabian can bring liquor to my house anytime he wants.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I will party with him any day of the week.
I don't understand all the talk about discipline. I mean, nearly pretty much every press outlet has been on its kick about discipline and the fact that the team needs discipline off the field. I don't really, and I as a fan, I don't really care what they do, because all I really care about is what they do on the field. I don't care if they're partying after the game, with or without, women or, ambiguous women. It doesn't. For lack of a better example, I don't really care, man. I don't really care what these guys do, as long as they get on the field and they play well and they, at least they put in the effort,
No, you're absolutely right. It's and it's funny because guys might have a reputation that they're partiers, probably not, and then it's it's usually like the really quiet guys that don't necessarily have a public persona. They're probably just animals. You just never know. And
well, unless they drink.
I agree with you. I mean, okay, but I mean, if they commit a crime, I could see that. But I guess I just don't care. Just be a professional. Take care of the stuff you need to take care of, and
Pájaro Picón posted El Salvador might line up 4-4-1-1.
Yeah.
Harley.
Nice sound effects, dude.
I'll have sound effects next podcast.
We're moving on up. It makes sense. I expected some variation of a 4-5-1 or a 4-4-2, just defensive minded. The three-man midfield comes into play here, especially with the wide players, because there's not going to be a lot of room to operate centrally. And I think that he could, he might even start, Soria might even throw out two forwards, Jimenez and Chicharito out there. Who knows?
Well, there's no question he's going to, I think he's going to go, we have a line of four, and then have two, like Gallito and Guardado, to kind of, and then he'll play with either Peña or Vela in front of them, and then have three forwards. That's honestly what I'm expecting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking also.
Yeah.
Peña's probably the better option because he's been having a good season, and he's been playing as a sort of like that withdrawn forward with León, and he's been doing it quite well. I think that he could go with Peña over Vela. That's just a personal opinion.
Yeah. So I mean, but again in Honduras, I think it'll be totally different.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's going to be the real test.
Absolutely.
Although these young guys might have a lot of passion going out there trying to prove themselves, so that might be.
I'm gonna miss the game. I'm gonna be flying to St. Thomas with my lovely wife.
Wow. Congratulations.
Well, it's a working trip. I have a couple of games. But
your sombrero this time, dude.
Man, that was rough.
Are you gonna DVR the game or what? Are you gonna be back?
Well, that is the second. I mean, that's what I'm going to miss is the second game.
Oh, the Honduras game. Oh, okay,
the first one. The first one, I'll be in Pittsburgh, watching the. I'll watch the. I think I'll be. Or actually, I'll be in. Where the hell am I going to be? Bridgeport, West Virginia. Doesn't that sound wonderful?
Oh, it sounds terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck finding. We always try to find a Mexican place wherever we go. I think we finally might strike out.
Yeah,
you never know.
Yeah. That's kind of south, a little south.
It's south of Morgantown, even so.
Oh, man.
So
Might
I'll
find
be
an El Salvadorian place.
I mean, I know that we'll probably talk about this more later in the week, but I mean, do we think that Mexico will win against El Salvador handily, or is it going to be, or are we going to have no nails left by the end of it because they're going to squeeze you, just barely squeeze by 1-0?
I'll tell you this: I don't expect El Salvador to lay down, but I feel like because it's a young team, again, they're probably going to be somewhat eager to prove themselves. But I feel like once Mexico scores the first goal, their morale will drop, and then we have a chance to score at least a couple more. I'm going to go with a 3-0 prediction.
I think that sounds about right. I mean, they have to score in the first 20 minutes, or at least get one in the first half. If they can get one in the first half, then I think it'll be a very comfortable win. If they have to wait till the second half to score, then that's when things get a little dicey.
I think everybody feels pretty comfortable that they'll pull off a win against El Salvador, but I think Honduras, probably poses the bigger question, I guess, the bigger question mark.
But I don't think this is they don't have the Mexico's killer, which is Costly. He's not playing anymore.
Yeah, but it's still away in that crazy place. I think I don't think getting a draw would be necessarily a bad thing.
Oh no, I would be totally thrilled with a draw. There's no question.
Go
ahead.
Last time they were there, they went up to 0.
Yeah, he was from Chicharito, and Massa messed it up at the end.
So
the ref gave a cheap penalty anyway, but
absolutely,
it's just easier to blame Massa, you know.
Yeah, but
the worst part for me of that game was that Guardado gets kicked in the face in the area.
Yeah,
and nothing. I mean,
nothing.
Kicked in the face. Not sure what happened there.
Well, the ref, whatever. I mean, even then, it wasn't. I remember being disappointed, but I was like, well, it's not a bad result. We hadn't won in Honduras in something like 13, 14 years, something like that.
It was 20 years.
Yeah, something crazy like that. So at the end of the day, a point is a point. But that was following the Jamaica game, which was extremely disappointing anyway, and we should have seen what was coming, man. I remember having a weird feeling about that.
Oh, dude, I totally saw. After that, there was no question. I was talking about him. I was like, the only way Mexico makes the World Cup is if they go through the playoff because, it was. The writing was on the wall. There was no. It was. It started to happen even at the end of the quad when they would play. They played Costa Rica and then was it Guyana or whatever that Grenada, whoever that team was in Houston.
Yeah, just they labored through those games, and we won all of them, but it was still like, you're sort of waiting to see. It was like at one point with Chepo, it was like even the friendly games, you tune in to see because you're hoping to see something different, and nothing ever came of it.
I feel bad for Chepo because, I know he got fired, but it was like just this avalanche of just really bad stuff happening. His players, just all of them, just going into a massive funk.
Is that
not just for Mexico.
I always wondered about that because they started off so well under him.
Yeah.
And I was like one of the last ones to finally say, all right, he needs to go. I was probably literally the last person.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It was such a weird one where I was like, I just figured they were eventually going to bounce out of it and figure it because they played so well under him. But yeah, it just completely fell apart. The wheels completely fell off.
I remember reading, not the zonal marking, but the guy that does it for SI, I forget what his name is. Maybe Ben Littleton, British guy, really good. He wrote the game about the Mexico-Italy game at the Confed Cup, and he's like, I have no idea what Mexico's trying to do. He says there's a good team in there, but they are just completely lost right now. And it was unfortunate. And Mexico, if they don't have that slump, then it's just weird how things happen like that.
That was a team that would fall apart the moment that they got scored on. You never felt there was going to be a reaction, and that's one of the biggest things that Herrera did with his team is they had a fight to them. They had there was a chip on the shoulder for the team, and even though he's gone now, I feel like that experience helped to sort of mold the group, this current group, and I mean, like I said, whenever they go out and play, you can expect at the very least a very, very good effort from the team, and that's half the battle, really.
And don't think for a minute that Osorio doesn't have a chip on his shoulder. I mean, if y'all know his backstory, that dude has a.
Oh, sure.
He has had to fight for everything. He is not.
Yeah. And you know what? But the key is for him to be able to translate that to the players, And
I don't think you have a problem with that.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
I mean, and that's why it's like, are you born into it, or did you have to fight your way in? And it seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm just making a vague generalization, but it seems like Mexico does better under coaches where the coach has had to work his way into it instead of a coach or that's been that because of who he was or who his father was or whatever it was that had like an inside track into having a career in the sport. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, Chepo was obviously a well-prepared coach, but I feel like there's a disconnect between him and his ideas in his head into the way he translates that over to the players. Because when he took over for Chivas, they were playing much like the national team was at its worst. I mean, it was just labored and it was all very rigid, and I think that the players get tired of that eventually, and without causing a revolt, quote unquote, is just you don't feel it on the field. You see the players sort of start tuning out, and the pressure just sort of intensifies. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't agree with that, dude. I don't agree. He has the results to back him up. He has 3 Liga MX titles. I think what happened with the national team, because it basically was all in 1 year. It was in 2013. And I think it was an accumulation of things, not just like tactics, but it was you lost some players that in the previous World Cup had been key players like Pablo Barrera, and Juarez, and I can't remember the other guy's name.
Vela.
Yeah. And the guy that broke his leg, who was he's playing Cruz Azul?
Oh, Edgar Andrade.
There's another one.
I think you already mentioned Barrera.
Jerry Flores? No.
No, it was three players. It was a midfielder.
Torrado?
No, Torrado. Well, see that was. I've mentioned them before, but just going past that, he lost a couple players through injury that those guys never recovered.
Yeah, and, but he failed to transition because when he lost Barrera, he could have relied on Elias Hernandez, who has been one of the most consistent players over the last 5 years in Liga MX, and he's from the same generation that Gio and Vela and Barrera are, and he did end up using Elias Hernandez a little bit, but then he opted to move Gio out of the forward position to the wings again, and it didn't work, and he even with the Olympic medal winners, he still didn't really translate a lot of those players to the national team that could have been sort of a spark. He used Guri Peña and he used Hector Herrera against El Salvador in the fall of 2000. I think it was the fall of 2012. But then when it came down to it, he chose to stick with Carlos Salcido, Gerardo Torrado, Massa, and he sort of chose to rely on the older players, and unfortunately, it didn't really come through for him because they weren't what the team needed. The team needed some dynamic sort of spark plugs, and he just didn't know where to look for them. And when he did look for them, he ended up choosing the wrong players. And so,
hey, you know what?
Also had with
I'm just
the other guy. Go on.
That Gio, sorry, Joey. Gio, he's not a stranger to playing on the wings, dude. That's where he started with Barca. That's where he was.
I know, and he started with Chepo at the wings too. But it was a move out of desperation under the pressure cooker, and for whatever reason, it just didn't work, and that's one of the many reasons why he ended up getting canned anyway.
Absolutely, it didn't work, but I think if you have Barrera, right, he's the guy on the wing, he's doing well, and your choice is Elias Hernandez or Gio, who has played there. He's a very dynamic player that can create a lot of scoring opportunities for your team, for himself, or maybe for other players at times. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. You put Gio there, but
sure, it wasn't a bad decision. It was just it ended up being not the right one.
The biggest issue for Chepo was just the fact, and Joe and I, we've talked about this before, is that it wasn't just Gio or Chicharito, or I mean, it was like 7 or 8 guys that all of them just were just in a massive funk, and unfortunately for Chepo, he kept pressing, which I can respect, but it's like, dude, if you're not playing well, I mean, the guy will understand if you pull him, you know. I mean, it's like, dude, I get it, we're trying to win this game.
You know, John, they interviewed Vucetich about, not too long ago, and they asked him about the national team, and he talked about, because he basically called up the same squad, and the Federación felt at that point that a lot of those players were, there was even talk at one point of just taking the America players to the World Cup, and he was saying how like even against New Zealand, we could have won that game with the under-20. So he had some gripes there. He did feel that the Federation lost a lot of hope on some of these players.
Yeah, because didn't he say in the interview that the players were just like he saw them like they were just like totally lost and just they weren't themselves, and he said that like the team was in complete disarray when he showed up. And am I making this up, or did he say that?
What? Was it Teach?
Yeah, this was like maybe like right after he'd gotten canned, when he gave a couple interviews, and I mean he was furious. He's like,
Yeah, it was to be expected. I mean, the team, after losing to the U.S. when Tena took over for that one game, I mean, you could tell the players were shot emotionally, just completely emotionally drained. So at that point, I think many of us knew that qualification was, at least direct qualification, was pretty much off the table. And after losing in Costa Rica, where Chicharito sort of fumbled that goal, and his facial expression pretty much said it all. I mean, which was all really compounded by Martinoli's rant during the USA-Panama game. During that, actually at the same Costa Rica game, nobody at that point, I mean, it's like, can things get worse? It's going to get worse if we don't go to the World Cup. And I think for a solid 15 minutes there, 12, 15 minutes, we all had to sort of come
to terms with the fact that they weren't. Yeah, believe me.
I remember sitting in my apartment saying, this is not that bad. I mean, it's just the World Cup. We're not.
I was spazzing out.
I was.
Gentlemen, something I wanted to mention was, going back to the Gold Cup and seeing how a lot of the Mexican media went against the team for those penalty kicks that they argued they were gifted to us.
Right.
Yeah.
And going into the World Cup, we had 2 crucial games where there was a soft penalty against Honduras, and then the penalty that John mentions against Guardado. But against the U.S. and at Azteca, there were 2 clear penalties.
Yeah.
They weren't called, and I think right there we lost right there. Like what was it? 4 points. 4 points that we lose. It was ended up being 2 draws.
Right. But, it's amazing how things like that. I've always wondered about what would have happened if in the 2009 U.S. game that played in Columbus when Sven was the coach, if Gio scores in the 3rd minute when he had a
that's the first play he goes in, and I think did it hit the post maybe or just went wide. I don't remember.
Yeah, so I wonder what would have happened if Mexico beats Honduras instead of tying 2-2, and like Jolie says, if they beat the U.S. and they get the 6 points and they put their campaign totally back on track. What do you think Chepo would have survived, Jolie?
Yeah, you know what? I think the Federación, and I also think the coaching, I think they got overconfident just seeing how they had been dominating. And I think it was another mistake was playing 3 World Cup qualifying games in 1 week. And you have players coming from abroad. What?
We're going to have the same problem in 2017 because that was because of the Confederations Cup, and that was just poor planning on part of the CONCACAF and the Mexican Federation. I hope they are now thinking about hopefully doing things differently 2 years from now.
Well, yeah, you have a squad that is based heavily abroad, and then you bring them and you send them to the Caribbean. You have them playing in Panama, then Jamaica. So I think that was a big part when Mexico finally goes home and they're playing against Costa Rica, who they had beaten Costa Rica twice in the previous round. But to me, that by that time the team was gassed.
Is the Copa America going to be kind of causing a bit of a traffic jam of matches?
No, because the only games that they're going to have on the official schedule are they have the 2 games in March where they have to go to Canada and then play
Canada at home, yeah.
Or however I guess that's or play Canada at home and it's out on the road, and then in November.
No.
And that's it. So they'll have nothing. They'll have nothing in June.
No, I think the 2 games in March are against Canada, home and away.
Oh, are they?
I'm going to say I'm pretty sure.
Whatever whoever it is. But anyway, so they have those 2, and then they have the 2 in November. So there's nothing in between. So the Copa America was not going to be affected at all. And I think that FIFA also did away with the one-off
the August
friendly date, the August one, and there was one, but they just did away with the one-offs altogether. Because I think they like doubling up on the. I mean, let's face it. It just it makes sense for everybody. It's a lot of people have to travel a lot of miles to play these qualifiers, and it's that's another thing that people have to understand about what happened in 2013 is that for 2 games, important games, they had guys that flew in for and had 36 hours, and they were totally jet lagged. I mean that's going to affect you too.
Hey, touching on the jet lag players that both John and Jolie mentioned, when Maradona took over Argentina, didn't he change and he went on record to saying that he was basically going to have 2 squads, one for qualifying and then one to play the World Cup because the players traveling back from Europe they just weren't ready mentally or physically. They were just the flight over was complicating their qualifiers.
It's 16-hour flights. I mean, that's tough. That's not, and then you have, maybe a day to practice with your team. I mean, and you're playing a game at for you is like at 4 in the morning.
They also give away the elevation advantage too, because now everyone's playing on equal terms. No one's used to playing at elevation. At least when they're playing at Azteca. That's why I was thinking it'd be kind of interesting to play a qualifier somewhere else.
Yeah, well, the new Monterey Stadium would be nice, but apparently that place has no ventilation.
And don't they lose power?
That's to prepare us for Qatar. It was strategic. Dude.
Seriously, apparently in the summer it's just supposed to be awful. Texas Stadium was like that. They had no ventilation too. So I mean, it was like just a hot box. So they call it La Tamalera, which just totally cracks me up. That's a great name. Well, gents, we've been on for an hour and 40 minutes. I think we covered some good stuff tonight. Do we have anybody on the YouTube chat?
Hey, we had a couple questions on there.
We did. What are the questions? Good Lord.
They said, you know what? They said, how many MLS teams is there going to be? It was directed to Chris from BRMW9.
Okay. What's the question?
He said, how many MLS teams? I guess how many teams is the MLS going to have? We were talking about, Miami or David Beckham's team and the LAFC team.
I think they want to have 20.
There's Atlanta is going to start playing in 2017. Minnesota as well, I think either 2017 or 2018. Miami, like you mentioned, LAFC 2. And that's, I think St. Louis is on the right track right now to also get a franchise. So I think that from what I understand, I mean, MLS probably wants to top out around 26, 28 teams.
That's way too many.
which I think is a lot of teams, to be honest. And I think that it's going to be a detriment to them because the player pool, the domestic player pool, isn't big enough to really be spread out over all these teams. So that means that they're going to have to go out and spend a lot more money on even like average players from wherever, South America, Africa, Europe, whatever. I think this sort of rapid expansion is good for the league in a sense. I mean, they're obviously doing something right to be able to expand at this rate, but for development of the younger players in MLS, it could be a good thing as well because it might force coaches to use some of the younger players. But I feel like if you're forced to use the younger players without actually them being ready for it, that I'm not entirely sure it's a good thing. But MLS is definitely on track to add another, at least I think confirmed. There's 5 teams that'll be playing in the league within the next 3 years. 5 more teams from what they have now, and probably add another 5 by 2023, 24.
I think that's insane to have that many teams. But then I remember that they don't have promotion and relegation. So honestly,
right,
to them, they just
right. It's a bit of a. I think that they would benefit from maybe doing their calendar year should probably change at some point. Maybe they just have a winter break or something.
So I mean, they're gonna have to do something. That you're talking about going to 30. That's twice the amount of teams they have currently, isn't it?
They have like 19 teams right now, I think.
Is it that many?
Wow.
Yeah, because I think the Western Conference and Eastern Conference are they don't have the same amount of teams.
Because Chivas isn't playing anymore.
Right, but Chivas will just simply become LAFC.
Right.
They're going to look to exploit those markets, and there's even talk about the Miami franchise. They're having problems really getting support for a stadium. So supposedly the owners of PSG might step in and buy the franchise rights from Beckham. I don't know. I mean, you see what happened with New York City FC this year. I went to a couple of games at Yankee Stadium. Surprisingly, they did build a decent following. I mean, I think I went to about 4 or 5 games. There was easily about 25,000 people at all the games that I went to. People love the gear, and there's a lot of people in New York City walk around with the snapbacks and the jerseys and all that. But the team itself was not very good, and they just fired the coach, which is pretty ridiculous. The team was kind of getting a little bit of a rhythm, and then they kind of brought in Frank Lampard and Pirlo and sort of forced them into the lineup, and it was not a good idea for them in that sense. But the younger generations are into it, and that's what's going to drive the supposed growth of MLS. I still have my doubts about that, but yeah, I mean they want to top out at like 28 something teams. So go figure.
20 teams right now.
What was the atmosphere like at their games? I mean, is it more like families, parents with their kids, or was it more like a young? Because I've been seeing advertising for LAFC where they say they're targeting the millennials, which isn't that kind of a euphemism for hipsters?
Were there a lot of beards at the game? I think is what Juan is trying to.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Flannels, beards, flannels, and scarves.
Yankee Stadium is in the Bronx, and it's very easily accessible for people who live in the suburbs of New York or Connecticut, like myself, or even within the city itself, any of the boroughs mostly. So it's in a good spot. People can get to the games. The atmosphere itself was not bad. I mean, they have a supporter section. I don't know how you go about creating a supporter section for a team that hadn't even played yet, but they did. They had their chance, whatever. The overall thing about watching soccer in a baseball stadium bugs me because the angles are weird. I mean, it doesn't matter where you sit. You don't really get a good feel for the field was just really small. But the actual people at the games were a lot of millennials, so to speak. A lot of young 20-somethings, families. There were families, their kids, it was a pretty good turnout and a good diversity to the crowd. So, I mean, I expect that to get better. They're going to have the same problem that Miami's having, finding a stadium, because real estate in New York is extremely expensive.
Yeah, good luck.
And I don't know, these guys that owned the team, they thought they could probably just sort of muscle into the local New York politics and get something done, and that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. I don't know. They're going to end up probably playing on one of the outer boroughs, which takes away completely from the whole New York experience, and it's not going to be dissimilar to what the Red Bulls are doing. They end up playing in Jersey, and the stadium is lovely in Jersey, but it's a pain in the ass to get there, and it's just a giant. The team lost its identity when it was bought by Red Bull. So I don't know, but I'd probably go to more games next year because it's only a 40-minute train ride for me, and the games are usually on Sundays, the home games, and Metro North, which is the local train authority, they let you have you can bring beer or alcohol on a train, so it's a pretty decent. It's fun. I mean, I had fun.
Wait a minute.
What's the other question that we got, Juan?
There's a comment where he says fight and win. If you've ever seen the Seattle Sounders capo, hilarious video.
Yeah, that guy's a tool, man. That guy is such a tool. The guy that leads the chants at the Seattle Sounders game, the guy needs to really just step off a cliff.
Do we have any other questions, or was that the only one?
I think that was it.
That was it. All right. Well, boys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up then. It's been a good talk, as always. No yelling. Nobody. Sorry, Jolie. Nobody died. Nobody was unmasked.
Wait a minute. What'd you say about Chivas, John?
I don't say anything about
still might.
All I said was that they're going to go back to their, once Vergara sells the team, they'll go back to their customary win a championship every 10 years. That's all I said.
Those are fighting words, man.
Hey, man. Hey,
fighting words.
Win
That's
something.
like kicking somebody's dog, dude. You just don't do it.
Hey, all I'm doing is saying, telling the truth. By the way, Pumas will be the super leader, and they will go to the Libertadores. And the last time they were super leader, they beat America in the finals. So that's all I have to say.
Woohoo!
There we go.
About that. Anyway, but it's great talking to you guys. Dan, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Albert, thanks for all your technical support. Are we going to do this again on Wednesday or Thursday?
Up to you guys. Wednesday's our normal day, so maybe that would be a good time, but we'll see.
All right, well, we'll figure it out. Anyway, this has been Los Cachirules. Juan, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, guys. Good talk.
Yeah. Joel, always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Yeah. Are you using your neighbor's wireless again, Joel?
No, I got my own now. And I paid the bill.
Christian, stay warm. I heard this was gonna get cold up there.
Oh yes, yeah. We got a storm coming, so you know what? You'll be around here. Well, not really. West Virginia is very south of here, so.
Yeah. Well, anything below 50 right now is freezing to me. So.
Oh Lord.
I just have to get used to it. All right. This has been Los Cachirules. It's thanks for joining us, and we'll do it again later on this week. Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Later.
Yeah.
Good night.